On a sunny day in June of 1914, Archduke Ferdinand, nephew and heir to the aging Kaiser Franz Josef of Austria, is assassinated in Sarajevo by a Bosnian Serb nationalist. It is the long-awaited excuse for war. By August 1st, Germany and Austria have harnessed themselves into a war against most of Europe. The First World War begins. Hahn is called up and sent to Belgium with an infantry regiment and is involved in heavy fighting. A few months later, he's recruited to a gas warfare unit. After a brief training, Otto, along with other gas pioneers, begins field experiments against the enemy in Belgium.
There were international laws that forbade the use of poisoned weapons, but in the escalation of gas warfare during the First World War, those international laws were ignored by all sides.
First, we attacked the soldiers with our gases, and then when we saw the poor fellows lying there, dying slowly, we tried, but we couldn't save those poor fellows. It made us realize the utter senselessness of war. As a result of continuous work with these highly toxic gases, our minds were so numbed that we no longer had any scruples about the whole thing.
Science is like a sword, a double-edged sword. One side of the sword can cut against misery, poverty, disease, ignorance, but the other side of the sword can cut against people, millions of people.
The German government had planned for a 6-month war. A year later, and Meitner is still managing the laboratory in Hahn's absence. In the summer of 1915, Lisa volunteers as an X-ray nurse technician with the Austrian army and is quickly sent to a military hospital near the Russian front.
Dear Elizabeth, we are converting the local technical institute into a barracks hospital for 6,000 to 7,000 wounded. Oh, Elizabeth, what I have already seen. I never expected it to be as awful as it actually is. These poor people, who at best will be cripples, have the most horrible pain. One can hear their screams and groans as well as see their horrible wounds.
Meitner returns to the Kaiser Wilhelm Institute in 1916, weary but eager to get back to her life.
Dear Herr Hahn, last night at the Planks they played 2 marvelous trios, Schubert and Beethoven. Einstein played violin, and occasionally made amazingly naive and really quite peculiar comments on political and military prospects. That there exists an educated person in these times who does not so much as pick up a newspaper is really a curiosity.
Lisa is also eager to resume an investigation that she and Hahn began before the war. It's the search for a missing radioactive element in the periodic table between thorium and uranium, element 91. In January 1917, Fischer appoints Meitner director of her own section for physics, in effect dividing the laboratory, Hahn-Meitner, into separate sections. One for Hahn in radiochemistry and one for Meitner in physics. Lisa's salary is raised to 4,000 marks, almost equal to Hahn's. Most important, Meitner now has the authority to direct her own work in her own section. When Meitner returns to the Institute, Hahn is still in the army, and Lisa mainly works alone. By 1918, they have found the missing element, element 91. Discovering an element is always a major accomplishment. Lisa and Otto name their new element protactinium. On November 9, 1918, the Kaiser flees, Germany surrenders, World War I ends. Much of Europe is devastated. In Germany, a new government is proclaimed. The Weimar Republic is beset with problems. Many Germans refuse to accept its legitimacy. Uprisings from the left and the right bring revolution and violence to the streets. Uncontrolled inflation, massive unemployment, lack of essential goods are part of everyday existence. People are hungry. Starvation, along with influenza, typhus, and cholera, claim many lives. At the height of the inflation, people bring home their salaries in wheel carts. By the winter of 1923, there is little fuel. Riots erupt. In Munich, the National Socialists attempt a putsch against the government. Their leader, Adolf Hitler, is imprisoned long enough to write Mein Kampf. He emerges a hero to his band of followers. Meitner and Hahn are affected by these conditions as well, but they continue to work. Meitner pioneers the new world of nuclear physics, gaining insight into the process of radioactive decay and the behavior of the nucleus. She is one of the leading physicists of her day. Hahn stays in radiochemistry, and he too is a leader in his field. No longer working together, they remain colleagues and friends.
Und der Haifisch, der hat Zähne.
Beginning in 1924, the situation in Germany begins to improve. Social projects and easy money characterize Berlin. A cultural revolution is also taking place. A glittering and glamorous nightlife is emerging. Lotte Lenya, Kurt Weill, Bertolt Brecht, Marlene Dietrich bring music, cabaret, and theater to an enthusiastic public. Then, in 1929, the stock market crash devastates Germany. As the Depression deepens, the Weimar democracy is under siege. It is a turning point for Hitler. Meitner and Hahn, like most of the world, are not prepared for the oncoming cataclysm. On January 30th, 1933, Hitler is sworn in as Chancellor. The fate of the Weimar Republic is sealed. He dismantles the constitutional government. Brown shirts stage massive torchlight parades. The Reichstag, the German parliament, is set ablaze. Thousands of political dissidents are jailed and sent to concentration camps, many to Dachau. That spring, Otto Hahn is a visiting professor at Cornell University. Meitner's taking his place as director of the institute. She cautiously writes to him.
The political situation is rather strange, but I very much hope it will take a calmer, more sensible turn. We were notified last week that, along with the black, white, and red flag, we must also display the swastika.
A Jew by birth, Meitner became a Protestant years before in 1908. But this conversion would not protect her as Hitler's dictatorship grows more powerful and close.
A rather large National Socialist cell has formed in the Institute, and it is all quite methodical.
Hahn returns to Berlin. He and Max Planck, president of the Kaiser Wilhelm Society, are appalled by National Socialist excesses, especially the persecution of Jews. But their greatest concern is to protect their scientific institutions.